stupid open border. But we know where most of them are.
It's a thing that everyone's been talking about in this country this week. President Trump saying we know where most of the sleeper cells are as concerns over possible terror attacks here in the homeland rises. Let's bring in the Big Weekend Show co-host and former U.S. Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Joey Jones and a great friend of mine. Joey, thank you for coming on. I want to ask you about these threats to the homeland. I mean, people are so concerned. My friends, my family, we're all talking about it. The president says he knows where these terror cells are. Shouldn't we be going after them?
I think there's some nuance in that interview because that's the soundbite that everyone's playing. I think what he's saying is a lot of people came here either illegally or came here and were allowed in from places where terrorists come from. And we know who those people are and we know where they are. I don't think he means we know that they are sleeper cells. And that's the problem because that ambiguous term sleeper cell, and when we look at the most recent attacks and we understand that someone, or at least the two young men with the bombs here in New York, they said they were inspired by ISIS videos and propaganda that were put out. Those are kind of your mix between a lone wolf and a sleeper cell. I mean, they were, you know, their parents came here, so they've been naturalized. And so there's this ambiguity between folks that come here from places where terrorists originate and then those that are actually communicating with a terrorist organization or even the Iranian regime.
Very important for Americans to be vigilant right now and just making sure we're not staring at our phones when we're walking around in public places.
Yeah.
That's key. I want to ask you about the breaking news today from the president announcing that we're going to be sending in warships into the Strait of Hormuz along with our allies and their warships to make sure that trade is secure there. But, you know, there were all these reports about Iran potentially using mining the strait. What's our recourse if they start targeting us?
Yeah, so there's a lot of complexity to the mine problem. Number one, they're not as likely as Iran shooting at the ships because mines don't discriminate. If it's an Iranian ship or a Chinese ship, and apparently, reportedly, China has brokered a deal with Iran to get their ships through. So the chances of mines being the main effort are still small but not impossible. If they do have the capability and end up putting mines in the Strait of Hormuz, the United States Navy we're behind. We took out the best mine-sweeping ships we had back in January, and the ships that are meant to replace them, the LCS, they call it they call it a not great ship. It's not a good design. It's never been used in combat. So we would have to go to a smaller capability that involves unmanned small vehicles and Navy EOD techs, and that would be a very arduous and long time span task. So we don't have a great replacement for the Avenger ships that we took out that were wooden hulled and kind of ready to be decommissioned. Thankfully, I don't know that mines are the biggest concern, and if the concern is to be shot by missiles, we can find those and take them out between now and hopefully very soon.
Okay. As our troops are fighting overseas and taking in incoming, the Democrats are complaining about the money that the Pentagon is spending on steak and lobster for them. This is Chuck Schumer. He says Hegseth, he's talking about Defense Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, spent $93 billion in 1 month. But instead of lowering Americans' health care costs, Hegseth used millions of taxpayer dollars on fruit baskets, Herman Miller recliners, ice cream machines, Alaskan king crabs, and a Steinway & Sons grand piano. Okay, when talking about steak and lobster, you did this video that went viral. I have like a minute left, Joey. And you are taking these Dems to task because sometimes for these soldiers, they get a steak and lobster meal maybe once in months. And it is the only good thing about being in the middle of combat.
Yeah, let me tell you, the logistics it takes to get a steak meal, we didn't get the lobster, we just got the steak meal to the outpost I was at in 2010. People risked their lives to get that log train to us, and it mattered to us. You know what? It was also very arduous to go out and take IEDs out the day before they got there. And that's the duality of war. That is the purpose of this, is that our country and our government is so dedicated to reminding us they care about us that they're willing to do whatever it takes to get a steak meal to us. In some places once a week. Where I was at, it was once for that deployment. And it reminded me, hey, there are people that are willing to risk their lives to tell me thank you. I better go do this job and do it right and make sure people stay alive and risk my life doing it. In that picture, you can't see him, but just to the other side there was Brian Smith. He got blown up just a few weeks later and ended up dying of stomach cancer disaster last year.
Oh,
So,
man.
you know, when I look at that picture, there's a lot of emotions, but that was our state mill in the middle of combat in a very dangerous place. Marines and soldiers risked their lives to get those stakes to us, and it does mean something. And any politician criticizing that without context, it just shows you how dumb they are sometimes. I mean, if you want to go criticize the defense budget, I'll go with you. There's a lot to criticize. But when that's your top line, it shows how out of touch you are.
Well, I hope somebody brings you a steak live on the show tonight, the big weekend show.
And I agree. I agree with what he's saying, too. Because our military deserves the best. I want to say something that I've taken a great deal of interest in, as well as various community leaders where I live here. We are on standby of looking for any and everything that looks out of place. It doesn't matter if it's a different vehicle. It doesn't matter if it's a different atmospheric feeling in the community. My suggestion would be to look for not only automobiles that you haven't been observing lately, but also look for license plates. Because if we start having a flood, let's say people coming in from New York, Chicago, Indianapolis, Atlanta, St. Louis, or even Memphis, in this particular area where I'm at right here, what are you doing here? What brings you here? What is your business here? Because I guarantee you, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be merging out into different areas that are going to be basically looking for trouble, are looking to create trouble by stealing or whatever. And I'm just letting people know ahead of time to be extremely vigilant in this time, especially as we get closer and closer to our 250-year anniversary, July the 4th, that I personally feel like we should have heavy armed security in areas that you really never would have thought could have been a possible threat, such as bridges, dams, radio stations, grids pertaining to electrical systems, pertaining to transformers, pertaining to cellular phone towers. I could go on and on and on about areas that these people could possibly do damages to us, or even create some sort of biological, chemical germ, spread it throughout the air or the water that could cause havoc to the American people. We right now are in a very, very critical time. I'm going to say as much, if not more, than what it was in and during 9/11. And if we don't watch, there's going to be people that's going to do some very, very mean, cruel things that could have been prevented if we was on standby in watching for these types of problems that are arising. And a lot of times, you know, you see an automobile, let's say it's got a construction sign on it. Somebody is working for Maytag, or they're in electrical business, or they're in a plumbing business. A lot of these people are very smart, and they'll put magnetic signs on their doors or on the back of their whatever and make it look like that they're legitimate people doing a legitimate project in a legitimate area, and the whole time they're in there basically scoping out the area to see what that they can do and how much harm and havoc that they can create. So please, it doesn't matter if you're on water or land or in the air. Pay close attention to what's happening right now around your environment. And don't hesitate to call or let somebody know or even ask if you feel like you can handle yourself, and walking up and saying, "Hey, buddy, is there anything I can do for you? What are you doing up here in this part of the neck of the woods? I see your license plates from Georgia. I see your license plates from Illinois, or maybe Missouri, St. Louis, or somewhere." Don't hesitate to seek out problems that you could possibly prevent. It's called preventative maintenance, the same as you would do on your automobile in changing out your oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, or doing a tune-up on your automobile. That way you get the best efficiency out of the gas mileage and etc. It's the same common sense strategies. And if we don't do this, even as the Bible speaks of, even so much as the more as you shall see the days approaching pertaining to the end of time, because you will be able to see this. You will be able to tangibly recognize what is occurring and why it is occurring. Please, please pay close attention.
Significant overnight strikes on Kharj Island, as you mentioned, a 5-mile strip of land just off the coast of Iran, and it's an island which is an oil hub. It handles some 90% of Iran's crude exports. Now, according to the US president, in his words, every military target on Kharj Island was struck by the US military. He described this and characterized this as one of the most powerful bombing raids in Middle East history. Now, we are waiting for further confirmation on the details of the scope and scale of this attack. It is understood that oil infrastructure on the island was not hit, was not targeted. However, President Trump has suggested that this could be next if Iran fails to allow vessels to pass safely through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, we've heard from Iran's new supreme leader from a purported statement written by him, read out on state TV. They have vowed to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed as a pressure tactic. But of course, this has really caused upheaval in the shipping industry, in the oil market as well. And so President Trump has vowed to push even harder if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened. Of course, we are also hearing new threats today from the Iranian regime, as you mentioned, with regards to ports in the United Arab Emirates. They have accused the US of using ports in the UAE to carry out such attacks. And as they have previously warned, they have warned their neighbors that any military bases, any assets like ports being used by the US would be, in their eyes, a legitimate target.
And then, Nada, what more can you say about these attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Iraq?
Well, Frederica, we're still waiting to get more details on the extent of this attack, but according to one security official, the U.S. Embassy compound in Iraq was struck by 2 drones. Now, at this stage, the extent of the damage or possible injuries is unclear. We have seen video, which has been geolocated by CNN, which appears to show plumes of smoke and fire emerging from a building in the vicinity of the embassy compound. But at this stage, those
That's another thing that the American people needs to be on crucial alert about, as far as seeing drones flying around in the sky and you trying to detect who it is that's flying those drones or why they're flying those drones. Because they could be around a very, very sensitive area, an airport or a place that, an ammunition place or something like that. And they're scoping out that area towards, once more, they got malice behavior in what they're doing. Now, right now is not a time for adventurous people in America. It doesn't matter if you're underage or above age, to be doing things that you shouldn't be doing towards attracting attention to yourself. Because I promise you right now, if you're attracting attention to yourself, odds are that's exactly what you're going to get. So wisen up, quit being foolish, be vigilant in looking for whatever looks out of place. It doesn't matter if it's around a marina, doesn't matter if it's around a dam, doesn't matter if it's around a bridge, it doesn't matter if it's around a telephone agency, towards what went on a few years ago, towards somebody basically doing a suicide mission in downtown Nashville because there were certain aspects of AT&T or Singular or somebody that had an issue with those people that basically pulled up and looked like a regular utility truck, or it wasn't a utility truck, it was an RV, and it was filled full of explosives, and the next thing you know, it blowed about a third of the freaking block away. And if I'm not mistaken, that happened on Christmas Day. That was a few years ago. I don't know if anybody remembers that event or not. But there's all kinds of things going on right now that the Bible talks about, that Satan will come down in great wrath because he knoweth his time is short. And it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody dressed up that looks Iranian or Pakistani or somebody from another land or somebody that's a foreigner. It can be our own people right here in the United States, that is going to cause havoc, because the spirit pertaining to the evil spirit is not prejudice. It will work in any individual that will allow for them to work in. And it doesn't matter if it's a cold-blooded murder. It doesn't matter if it's somebody just creating havoc. It doesn't matter if somebody trying to bust through Mar-a-Lago down at President's place down in Florida, or somebody trying to bust through the gates in Washington, D.C., or somebody doing other types of ill will to the American people. Right now, people need to be on alert in every aspect, especially in the cyber communities.
Social media, he said that
I'm seeing so much propaganda going forth right now, in essence, towards our military destroyer got destroyed, or this happened, or that happened. And it's just a bunch of propaganda. It's just a bunch of lies. That way, it will keep everybody confused and keep them uncertain. People won't have, it affects people's morale pertaining to them staying strong, staying long, be there for each other. This is a time, like the Bible says, forsake not the assemblies of thyself together. Have a communicating team set up that you can talk to, that you can feel confident in what you say to them versus them saying to you that it's all authentic and it's true. Because right now there is so much false, phony propaganda out there, it's not even funny.
A senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Aaron, always great to see you. So what do you make of President Trump's decision to, number one, strike Kharg Island after Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz? Do you think this will force Iran to capitulate and reopen it?
I don't, Fred, and I think we all need to be extremely sober and realistic about where this is heading. To quote David Petraeus about another conflict, tell me how this ends. And right now, I don't think anyone who studies Iran or American foreign policy in a serious way could give you a timeline right now. In large part because in a war of choice and discretion, as opposed to a war of necessity, you need really clear goals. Because if the war wasn't critical or imminent, there was no direct threat to American security or prosperity on February 23rd. If you undertake this kind of operation, the largest deployment of American naval and missile power since the Iraq War in 2003, you need to have clear, defined, and achievable objectives.
Exactly.
And frankly, even being charitable, the administration has wandered all over the parking lot. So I think we're due for weeks more of this. If the president is serious about deploying an international coalition, Japan, China, he mentioned, South Korea. We've done this before in 87, 88 in response to a Kuwaiti request to escort tankers through the Gulf. We did it in the Red Sea in 2023 against the Houthis, but this is really complicated because we're talking about bringing these countries into conflict with Iran, something I don't think any of them want to do.
So when the president posts on social media that he thinks China, UK, France would also participate, it sounds like you're leaning that is more wishful thinking. There may not be any real indicators that they would want to do that. They would want to engage in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, I mean, I think that because that is likely. I mean, this is not 87, 88. The Iranians have much more sophisticated naval mine assets. They've got short-range ballistic missiles. They have anti-ship missiles. Look, if I was head of Japan, South Korea, France, I would ask the administration the question, fine, you want to open the straits? We get it. But tell me exactly how this is going to end. And is there any alternative to de-escalating this? That would be the first set of questions that a responsible head of state of any of these countries would ask. And frankly, I'm not sure what the answer would be on the part of the administration.
Do you think this administration thought with these strikes, with the initial strikes of Iran going after leadership, that Iran was not going to defend itself? In other words, did the U.S. underestimate the lengths of which it looks like Iran is going to go in the name of defending itself?
Absolutely. We misjudged our adversary, and that could be critical. It could be fatal. And I think the president, using Venezuela as the model, became infused and probably intoxicated with the extraordinary will and capacity, which is amazing, of the U.S. military, and then thought somehow by bringing all this firepower to bear, an Iranian Delcy Rodriguez would emerge, a more pragmatic, but maybe still ideological leader who would cut some sort of deal. As my friend Karim Sajapur from Carnegie says, maybe Trump thought he could get a Delcy Rodriguez. He's more likely to get a Kim Jong-un. That's the real problem here. Defiance and retribution.
This week, Iran announced that the son of the late Ayatollah, who was killed in the early days of this conflict, will take over as a supreme leader. That he has not been seen publicly, as far as the world knows, but did purportedly send a message saying the Strait of Hormuz, must remain closed, and vowed revenge on the U.S. and Israel. What do you anticipate might potentially be next?
Again, I think we're in for weeks of what appears to be a standoff, with the United States having ample munitions and the Israelis to continue to pound leadership targets, ballistic missiles. Maybe they're considering special ops to try to find where those 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium in 18 to 20 scuba-sized tanks, which would give the Iranians a foundation over time to begin to produce enough fissile material for a nuclear weapon. So no, I'm not sure. Dramatic developments, I think we're in for a long slog. And right now, there does not appear to be a strategy for unseating the regime, nor forcing it to capitulate. And the Iranians have identified the prime target of vulnerability, which is not just the Straits. It's American military bases in the Gulf and Gulf state infrastructure. So no, I think we're in for weeks more of this without a certain outcome, Fred.
When asked about the end of this war, President Trump says he'll know when he feels it in his bones. What do you interpret out of that?
I mean, that's probably the same response he would have asked as you interviewed him and asked him, why are you doing this? I mean, it's not good enough to take America to war and then to look for means to end that war because you somehow feel it in your bones. I mean, I worked for Republican and Democratic administrations and voted for Republicans and Democrats. This was a war of choice based on unproven and false intelligence, that Iran's had an ICBM that could strike the U.S. The president said repeatedly the Iranians were going to attack the United States, or they had enough fissile material to make a bomb within days or weeks. None of this was true. And yet you have this unfolding, which is quite remarkable. A brutal, authoritarian, evil regime. The question is, what is the objective, and how does the United States achieve that objective or create an alternative?
Okay, some of that he's talking about I agree with, pertaining to objectives and what's the end goal. But what he also just got to saying pertaining to it all being false, pertaining to the dangers that we were staring at, I find this individual to be very, very careless in getting on national TV and saying these things due to the fact that he don't know. He thinks he knows, but he really don't know what our CNA Pentagon officials was already staring down the barrels at, especially since we done what we done pertaining to Midnight Hammer in knowing that we was going to basically wound the bear, but we didn't kill it. There ain't no telling what these people was plotting and planning ever since that Midnight Hammer happened. You went in there and you messed those people's minds up, and you messed them people's whole ambitions up and what that they was doing and how that they was doing it. And if they wasn't plotting and planning on attacking the American people before Midnight Hammer, I'm pretty sure that they probably was afterwards, because now you done pissed off a bunch of people in trying to prevent them from gaining nuclear activity, and those that disliked us in the beginning now hate us. Why? Because you made a strike towards them. You hurt them. You damaged them, but you didn't finish them off. See what I'm saying? So that individual, some of that information that individual just got through telling us on TV, strike it off towards it being fake and phony and unrealistic. Because to me, if there's ever been a time that we as individuals needed to pay close attention to what's going on right now, it should have been after Midnight Hammer, whenever those, thank God for them, pilots that was willing to fly nonstop for I think about 72 hours. I'm pretty sure one pilot probably went to sleep while another one was flying, and vice versa. But they flew nonstop above the radar while they was being filled up with fuel in different intervals and different exchanges, just to be able to get over there and drop hairline targeted precision bombs that was made to go into the earth and explode 150 to maybe 500 feet after they already done made penetration. And that's going through rock, that's going through sand, that's going through concrete, that's going through anything. As a matter of fact, they went right after, within just a couple minutes or seconds, and dropped another bomb on top of where that other bomb went. That way they could drive it that much further down in there to know that they got that facility. Whenever that occurred, there should have been red light districts, red lights going on everywhere in the global society. Wow, that was a big deal. Yes, it was. But once more, you don't slap the bear or wound the bear. If you're going to go after the bear, you need to kill the bear. You need to finish the bear off, because if that bear becomes wounded, then he's going to become that much more aggressive in coming after you. Or that's what I was taught growing up in Northwest Tennessee in the schools, that if you're going to shoot at something, first of all, you don't need to shoot it just to be shooting it. You need to shoot it because you're hungry, because you need to shoot it, because it's dangerous. But if you was to go after, let's say, a bear or a moose or something big, and you wound it, odds are it's coming. And whenever it comes back the second time, it's going to be just like cancer. It's going to come back with a vengeance. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. And God bless our endeavors towards which way we go from this moment on. And Lord Jesus, please have mercy on our military personnel, either overseas or even right here, and our first responders. Lord Jesus, if there's ever been a time that we needed your protection and your divine leadership, it is of today. Thank you. God bless you, and shalom.